Today, we're talking to a product of the PMEA festival system who has written a book, and a lot of the book has to do with his experiences in that PMEA festival system. That's all on today's PMEA's Take Note podcast, presented by the Slippery Rock University Music Department. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of PMEA's Take Note podcast presented by the Slippery Rock University Music Department. I have a really interesting episode for you today. We are talking with a PMEA product that has written a book, and we're going to talk about the book and what's in the book in a little bit. But first, let's introduce our guest, Adam Brock. Adam, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's so exciting to be back with PMEA in one way or another after all those festival seasons. Oh, man, like too many years ago.
Too many years ago. Yeah. So let's, I guess, I don't really know where to begin because I want to talk about the book, but I want to kind of get the context of how we got up to this point in the book. So let's start with your experience in music and PMEA. If you could kind of give us the sketch of that part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was born from musical parents. My mom was a singer and a pianist, and she got us involved in music school when we were really young. So music's always been a part of my life. I picked up the clarinet around 12 or 13, and I always enjoyed playing, but didn't really seriously pursue music and practice and repetition and really trying to improve my skills until entering high school, realizing there were these opportunities through PMEA, and then, of course, preparing for the auditions. So I auditioned my first year as a sophomore. I felt pretty good about my chances, and as I write in the book, I missed it by just one spot. In District 11, and I was honestly kind of really upset because I had heard all these great things about district band. Like you have no idea what it's like until you get there, and I was really looking forward to this opportunity. Didn't make it, but in looking back on it, I really kind of changed gears after that first failed audition. Kind of just changing my work ethic, changing the amount of time, the expectations for what is practice, what are my goals, how do I set them. And ultimately, I came back for my junior year auditions. I placed fifth in the clarinets in District 11, and after that was able to do 9 festivals between band and orchestra during my junior and senior years. And honestly, that change after my sophomore audition, not only was it great because it got me into the PMEA community for a bunch of different festivals to meet different players and conductors, play different music, but it also really had a large impact in my academic and professional life because at the same time during junior year, I was taking a lot of tough, like college preparatory courses in high school in addition to music. And I kind of took the ethic that I built for PMAA auditions and put it into other parts of my life. And I guess the rest is history. I mean, when I think back, my college essay was written about my first failed audition. I write about it in the book. And even in interviews for a similar job to the one that I have now, they asked me some question along the line of, tell me about a time you failed, or tell me about a really big challenge that led to so-and-so in your life. And I told them about my PMA audition. And it just keeps kind of coming back and back to think about the root of what I'm doing now. And at least in many respects, it comes back to my involvement with PMEA.
I love that part of it, taking that experience that for so many may have been crushing, and I would imagine it was crushing for you as well, but then you turn it into that positive and look what the outcome was.
Yes. Yeah. And I knew I wanted to get better. I didn't think I'd go to all-state band the next 2 years. I was just trying to make district band, but things kind of happen as they do. And well, I suppose with PMEA, the great thing too is, right, you get the experience of not only the initial audition for district level festivals, but in going through all those re-auditions and preparation for re-auditions. I was thinking yesterday, I haven't done too many interviews in my life, but I like to think that the ones I have done, I had already done the practice because I'd auditioned for PMEA so many times. You just kind of get used to putting it all out there to judges that you can't even see the face of. And, we get what we get. But I really think, because my brother also did some festivals as well, and he also kind of attributes this interview preparation, just these big life skills, right, that can transcend any discipline or activity that we find in music. And
For
that's
sure.
the reason why I love it.
Absolutely. I had a chance to read a little bit of the book that you
Sure.
were so kind enough to send to me, and you talk a little bit about kind of some of those experiences in those festivals, and how you know I was kind of amazed at how you remember down to the details. um I guess that speaks to kind of the transformative power of the festival and being there and being on stage. And you were talking about the conductor, and
Yeah.
if you could just talk a little bit about that, and being at those festivals, and what that meant to you.
Certainly. Yeah, it was really fun to record some of these memories I've had. I mean, I think the thing that was great about this project, at least for me, but reason why I love books in general, is that they really do immortalize moments in time. I mean, once it's down, it's not, it's not going to be forgotten. Maybe, right? Maybe people don't read the book and that's fine, but at least for myself, at the very least, it was interesting, especially in this last year during the pandemic, right? I mean, I did a majority of my writing from last summer to this summer, in a time when we weren't seeing many people. I personally, unfortunately, wasn't really in any ensembles due to the fact that in Austria they're just, even the music people at the arts university were struggling to find things to play. I think it was particularly enjoyable to write about these experiences because it was bringing me back to a time where I was doing an activity that I loved with the people that I enjoyed doing it with. But right, so I have, let me think. In the first section of the book, which is kind of, it's somewhat of a long exposition, more or less. At the beginning of the book is my experiences in high school that then set the stage for everything that happened during college and up to the few months after my graduation in spring 2020. So I talk about my first audition, as we saw, and maybe as we'll read later today, about how going into it really excited, had that let down. My sight reading, I mean, the solo preparation and the scales went well, but I tanked the sight reading. All the nerves were just waiting for this 4-line piece of music in 3/4. It just, everything went crazy. Um, After that, I talk about kind of just regrouping with my lesson teacher, and we just, like I said, we really reattacked it differently and hope ideally to a higher level in the following season. And then, I had to think. I know I could have written 80 chapters about the different things and memories and little subtleties of the festivals that I really liked. The three that I specifically chose, so one, at my first year at All States, we worked with Brian Balmages, and we're playing DeMay's Gandalf from his Lord of the Rings suite, which I love. I I've listened to that before any of the Lord of the Rings soundtrack or the movies themselves. So to me, the real like Lord of the Rings soundtrack is the DeMay rather than from the movies, which I know maybe not be a popular opinion, but I really enjoyed playing Gandalf. And during that festival, it was really interesting because we were playing at Central Dolphin sometime during the week, I think at night, and there was rain pattering on the roof. And I was sitting there in the second clarinets, and really, you looked up at the podium, and something visibly was bothering Balmages. And he said, "Hold on, I got to take a step back." He walked off the stage, sat at the piano, and then, I mean, he just started playing. He more or less said he had this kind of voice or this noise in his head from the rain, and he had to get it out because it was distracting him from rehearsal. But that was one of the few times I could say, I mean, it was just like the ultimate grace and beauty, not only of music, but this improvised music, because we're all sitting there in the auditorium stunned that our conductor just left the stage. He's playing this beautiful piano. It really sounds nice with the rain. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the kind of stuff that we can do with music. And especially at PMEA, where you have all these good performers and people interested in the craft, and then an excellent conductor and pianist like Balmages. I will never forget that. That scene too has been in other people that have pre-read the book, and especially in the first section, that has often been some of their favorites, just because it comes out of nowhere, but it was remarkable. And he also, at the conclusion of that festival, had some really powerful speech just about remembering that, uh, as Bauman just said, there will eventually be a new principal horn, principal trumpet, trombone in the Chicago Symphony. And he more or less told us, you need to decide if you're going to become that person, whether or not you go this route or that route. There's a time when you have a gift or a talent or at least an interest in something, and you need to decide what you're going to do with it. And I have kept those words in the back of my head ever since. They come up later in the book too, about deciding if it's going to be you. And so, and really, I couldn't have asked for more from my first All States. And then the second two main chapters about PMEA are about my second All States in 2016. I met one of my best musical friends there. I know my high school teacher had always mentioned that, you'll meet people at PMEA festivals who, even once, you fall out of contact with some of your high school friends or people you knew from the neighborhood, you will still be in touch with some of the people you meet through these festivals, these friendships. And my friendship with Luke Simons, who I was just texting, is the same thing. We were stand partners. I knew of him before the festival because he was also at 2015 All States, but we just never got around to talking. But Luke was one of the best players I've ever met from the PMEA circuit. Not only did we have fun playing together, but we bonded. We ended up going to the same university and then playing one semester in a group together, which was really kind of a nice full circle for us. And then also at that festival, I actually, for the first time of all my PMEA festivals, I was first chair in the state band and did some solos on different pieces. And I have to admit, as great as the experience was, I was super scared because I'd soloed here and there before in groups, but I didn't think my first PMEA opportunity for that would be at my last festival with the all-state band. And some of the solos were particularly exposed, which, was great to have been given that opportunity. I just didn't imagine that the first one would come in front of an audience from around the entire state at the Hershey Lodge at my last festival. I'm getting ready to graduate. I'm thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And it was Mas Langcha's Requiem too, which is a piece that has quite a deep meaning and intent behind it. And our conductor Shannon Keitlinger read us the program notes before the concert. Like, guys, by the way, this is really serious. And I'm like, this is great, but oh my God! Now, in addition to just doing the music, I gotta make sure that I wanted to do a proper interpretation for Mas Langcha. It wasn't a technically challenging solo, but the intro, the clarinet part, other than piano ostinato in the background, it was silent. And I still have the recording, and yeah, it was fun. And it definitely, all of these experiences definitely led me to try to find or figure out how much music was I going to keep in my life. I mean, I did not end up majoring in music, but nevertheless found ways to keep it for myself, with others throughout my time at Temple University, both playing, writing about it now, as I mentioned earlier, was kind of a way to take myself back, take others back, right? I mean, I think it was an absolute privilege to participate with PMEA, and I like the idea of trying to bring others. I mean, as you mentioned from some of the writing, taking them into the audition room, onto the stage, so that we can all kind of get an idea of what that experience is like, whether or not I or you or someone else has been to the festivals. And as I mentioned, I mean, still to this day, when I think back to high school, some of the defining activities, things that changed me, a lot of it really does come back to PMEA.
Yeah, and that was one of my takeaways was I've been around PMEA my whole life, never made it to the all-state level, made it to the region level, but understand what it's like in those situations. But I think so few of us know what it's like to be on that all-state stage, and then particularly to be on that all-state stage in a solo capacity. Really appreciated how you talk about that in the book. You teased a little bit earlier here that you were writing some of this while in Austria.
Yes.
So talk to us about that. What were you doing in Austria? And let's just start there. What were you doing in Austria?
Sure. Right. So this last year, I was working with Fulbright Austria, which is a governmental organization there that brings in teachers, scholars, and researchers from around the world to work either at Austrian universities or in their public school system. So it's a long story. The book people ask me, okay, what's the book about? And the one question I've always gotten in the last year or two is I ended up studying mechanical engineering. Like I said, still doing music, other things on the side. But people ask me, how did a mechanical engineering major end up teaching English in Austria, which is what I did last year. And the book, in some ways, is my long-winded answer to that question. But as I went through college, I enjoyed my engineering studies. I always wanted to teach. It just so happened that a combination of study abroad and friends and ideas about the future and knowledge of programs like this one through Fulbright Austria came into mind. I made the decision I wanted to go after that. I mean, like Baumler just said, you need to decide if it's going to be you. And I decided, yeah, I think it would be really cool to live abroad for a year or two, teach English, work on developing my teaching skills, all of this stuff. So I applied to positions in Austria and Germany. Fulbright Austria was the first acceptance I got, and I never looked back. Uh, I know I had did a study abroad program in Germany, so I knew relatively more about, I guess, German society, you could say. And one of the things that was attractive about Austria is not only was it sort of unknown, but it was just a part of the world I never thought I'd spend a lot of time in. I'm teaching. I live in Graz, which is the title of the last chapter of the book. It's in southeast Austria. It's about 2.5 hours by train from Vienna. The schools I work at are right along the Slovenian border. I mean, so it's Central Europe. Like I said, it's a part of the world I may have never gotten to as a tourist, just because I didn't really know much about it. I mean, Graz is a great city, but it's kind of in Austria. It's under the radar a little bit. You hear about Vienna and Innsbruck for good reasons, but Graz is a bit of a secret. And I kind of liked it that way, to be honest. Actually, you really get a nice, it's a big university city, but you also get there's a lot of like Southern Austrian kind of experiences, both in and outside, and then teaching about 40 minutes south by train near Slovenia, just in the heart of what is the white wine region, actually, in Austria. Is once again just something I never thought I'd do. And the reality is, yeah, PMEA was one of the things that got me there. I wrote about my musical experiences in essays for Austria, for Germany, and for another program. Um, and right, so I worked in two secondary schools, which are more or less like high schools there. I taught lessons on anything from my experiences with the English language to anything American, whether it was
Mm.
politics with last year's election, culture, music, food. What questions do you have, like for my students? They taught me things about Austria, which was great. Once again, things I would have never learned, even from a textbook, because some of this information you just need to hear. I went to the opera a lot last year, which was really fun because I got into opera like junior year of college, and I guess the added challenge of listening to it there is either you're listening to German operas, so I had to make sure that my German was I was following along literally with okay, what are they saying? But sometimes if they were doing right an Italian opera that was translated into German, like I've seen Don Giovanni or Marriage of Figaro, uh, you had Italian to German to
Mm.
English in my brain, and it was just a fun like, oh my God, what are we doing? But I mean, the music was great. The Opera House in Graz, it's not as big as Vienna, which thankfully I did get to two performances in Vienna this past spring, because I figured got to go to one of the hearts of the opera world historically and in general. I mean, huge house, like I couldn't even believe it getting there. Um, but right, so I taught my lessons. I right checking out the scene in Austria, and what more can I say?
Mm.
Well, the I'm returning this fall to one school that's the same, another one I'm switching up, but they're in the same city. And actually, the kind of the pipe dream right now is some of my teachers in Austria pre-ordered and helped support financing the book, and they actually they've said to me and their students they want to use it in our curriculum next year. Because I mean, so often we talk about, okay, well, how did the American TA, how did he come to Austria? Okay, fine. But now it's about 300 pages. We have a 300-page document that not only we can use to improve our language skills, but also like, hey guys, if you want some more details about me or just in general, or things about America, like I said, that's my job. Um, here's this book about it. And if we can pull that off, I think that'd be really cool. And certainly, I mean, I have to think I always loved reading, but I know I would have been more motivated to read if the author was someone that came to class, not someone that's
Sure.
dead, or just someone I think one of my favorite things to do with music is not only, okay, what is the piece that we're playing, but what's the history? Who is the
Hmm.
composer? What's the intent? I write about in my time at Temple when I was playing in the symphonic band there. We played Lo Presti's Elegy for a Young American, one of the most powerful pieces I have ever played or heard. And what made that piece so rich, right, is it's about the JFK assassination and his response. And I had been learning, taking history courses about similar things that semester. And that piece of music for me was so powerful because not only it's a great piece, but it has this background, and I think it really makes you appreciate what are we trying to do, and it the same way with the book, right? Okay, not only okay we have this random English book, but here's this English book by this guy that we can talk to about it. So we're hoping that the students will be excited for that, and hoping that we can just make it happen. And I think there is a real chance. So we'll see.
I think we've also been remiss in mentioning the title of the book. It's titled "My Song to Sing," and
Yes, my song to sing.
we'll talk about how you can get it toward the end here.
Sure.
To be clear, it's not just about music.
Correct.
You kind of had this other life too in the athletic world in hockey,
Yes.
and so I just love how you then combine these things, and this idea of bringing it to a classroom is just fascinating to me. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I thank you. I didn't start the project thinking I try to get it in Austrian high schools, but then, as things kind of happened, and I was thinking about, well, what can we do with it? And I approached some of my teachers, and they got really excited, which was, as you're going through the project, it's always nice to get the support. But right, uh, I like the idea. I believe we all can wear many hats if we're so inclined and interested in doing so. And for me, so I mentioned earlier, thinking back to PMEA is one of the fundamental things in high school. But the other thing for me is ice hockey. Uh, I grew up playing, my dad grew up in Philadelphia playing street hockey in the Northeast, and then kind of introduced my brother and I to it at an early age. Uh, I love, and yeah, I remember starting, I think I was around 7 or 8, and my parents still joke about some of the like little kid skates that we were doing performances and how cute it was. But you start from the bottom, right? You start from scratch. But thankfully, music and hockey have always been kind of my dual passions that I've done kind of like as side jobs throughout, whatever academic pursuits that I was doing in high school or college. I played hockey for about 10 years and actually transitioned into officiating hockey during the end of high school, college, and even now through my time in Austria. And as I write, I believe I sent it to you as well. To me, one of the big things that, to be honest, when I was younger, I had one friend on my club team who played trombone and was in our high school band, as well as a hockey player. And we both kind of bonded over the fact that we understood you can like music and hockey, right? The activities which sometimes, my musician friends didn't understand. What are you doing out there? And the hockey guys like, what are you doing? And I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm living my life, man. Uh, but one of the things for me that kind of, I suppose, like I said, I didn't major in music, but I found a great compromise between playing hockey and playing music in officiating. And I mean, I could talk about this for days, but I talk about how when I was at Regent Orchestra my senior year, our conductor was offering opportunities for students in the ensemble to conduct. As I hadn't thought too much about a career in music, despite the fact that I've loved it, despite the fact that, right, I did all these festivals. I was always interested in teaching, but likely an academic subject. At that time, it was math or physics. But she offered the baton out, and I thought, oh my God, that would be really interesting. And I raised my hand, and I didn't get picked. And I remember, I mean, that orchestra was probably the best orchestra I've ever played with. I don't know if I'll ever play in a better orchestra. The recording still of that stuff, I can't even believe that we did that all those years ago. But one of the things I wondered after that festival is had I taken the baton and conducted, might I have changed my kind of trajectory? Might have been
Hmm.
interested in, okay, I got to drop it. Conducting would be awesome. And I still think it would be awesome. But what I found for me is that in officiating ice hockey, I found a job that is effectively acting like a conductor in the sport of ice hockey. Now, I'll tell you that I can't speak for my colleagues in that. I'm sure I'm in the minority of relating music conducting for a concert band to something like ice hockey officiating, which can be quite messy. It's a great job, believe me. And one section of the book is devoted to my experiences doing that. But for me, I think in finding this balance between hockey and music, which is why the cover has music notes and hockey sticks on it, kind of this dual thing. In finding that balance, I found my own way to be a conductor, just in a different setting than typical concert band or orchestra. Um, so I guess this all goes back to, like you said, yes, doing other things other than music. Um, right, I suppose in the book, we have my high school experiences, my first year at college where we played Elegy for a Young American. I did 2 different study abroad programs during college, one in Northern Ireland, one in Leipzig in Germany. I talked about officiating. I talked about my transition from engineering to pursuing these grants in Austria. And then the last section is kind of unique. I don't mention the pandemic at all up through the first 6 sections, up to the end of my time in Leipzig. But as things have progressed, I said I have to. If I'm writing a memoir about my life right now, I have to include something about the pandemic. I mean, I think all of the art and music coming out of this period is really interesting, right? And I think will be looked back on with a particularly interesting lens because it's this pandemic inspired art, right, that you haven't had for 100 years. But the last section is 6 chapters. I talk about my view of America, my experiences in the pandemic, my ultimate acceptance to the position in Austria, and just kind of how then that set the stage for me for my departure. And I don't talk about, I suppose, music performance in any of those chapters, but some of the ideas still to come back from PMEA and whatnot. But yes, that's a jumbled kind of assortment of what we discuss in the book. Yeah.
Let me we'll come back to the book in 1 second. Let
Sure.
me ask you this. So let's say you're in an elevator with a student who's thinking of doing a PMEA festival and auditioning, but there's some nerves there, there's some
Sure.
concern, some fear. What's your elevator pitch on why it's worth it to do it?
Okay. Oh, great question. Well, let's see. I mean, as I said earlier, I think, well, let me think. If I'm phrasing it, if I'm phrasing it to that student, it's that, well, one, you have nothing to lose in going into audition because whether you succeed or fail, the only person that knows you were there is you, really, between the fact that the judges are kind of blind. Um, it's going to be an amazing experience to not only boost your self-confidence, but just your ability to put yourself out there for whatever that is. And with this experience, not only do you gain the knowledge that, yeah, not only can I do this, but I can probably do it again. And that is a mentality that I think we can all, as I said earlier, transfer to everywhere in life. And
Mhm.
if it just so happens that you are selected for this festival or these festivals, you're gonna have the time of your life, and that I can 100% guarantee. And you just don't know where it's gonna take you, whether band, orchestra, chorus, anything.
Right. All right. Well, you convinced me. I'm an audition. You convinced me.
Great.
So the book is imminently coming out, correct?
Yeah.
It'll be out very soon.
Yes, it will be out on Amazon. Primarily, the primary distributor will be on Amazon. That'll also be on Kobo and Ingram Spark, which are other type of like self-publishing platforms. Just for some background too. So I did work with the publisher on the book, but they're not a traditional publisher of sorts. They call themselves hybrid publishing, which is these days, right? You can self-publish books, but there are organizations out there to help assist that process. It was certainly an interesting journey going through this, right? I mean, I've read books all my life, but to go out and make one yourself in the different avenues that are available, I've certainly learned a lot, benefits and disadvantages of doing that. But yeah, so it will be published under my name, by me, rights going to me. It'll be on, like I said, the primary distribution source will be Amazon, but it should so happen, depending on how things work out, it could find its way into Barnes and Noble. I know I'm going to try to get into some local libraries. It'll be in Austria, ideally,
Mm,
as we move forward. And I know one other thing. I mean, there are many different ways that, I mean, I love bookstores, believe me, but in terms of book sales these days, it seems a lot is online. So I know there are other avenues, Book Depository, just kind of other sites out there um, for purchasing. But yeah, Amazon will be the main distributor. And the benefit of that is, to my knowledge, that because it's going to be published on Amazon, it can be printed anywhere in the world, so long as there's an Amazon kind of partnered printing
okay.
facility there. So what, and we got to make sure this is the case, but my belief is that, for example, getting books to Austria, more books, is that they can be printed in Germany or the closest kind of Amazon printing house in Europe, and then shipped from there, rather than having to be printed in one location in the United States and then shipped across the sea with international fees and this and that. Just the idea is to for just convenience
Right.
for everyone. So yeah, Amazon will be the main source.
Okay. So again, the title is My Song to Sing.
Yes.
Not available on Amazon yet, but as soon as it is, we will certainly put that out there on our social media channels so you can find it. And I'll put the plug in as you're shopping on Amazon. Shop with Amazon Smile, and
Yes.
and
Yes.
use
Certainly.
PMEA as the charity that you would pick there.
Oh, really? That's
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, done deal.
All
Very
right.
cool.
Yeah.
Very
All right, we
cool.
appreciate that. And so, yeah,
Thank
Adam,
you.
thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. As I said, we'll promote this as soon as it's out and available. I've had the chance to read some of it. I'm looking forward to reading the entire book.
I really appreciate it, and for your willingness to give early praise. I know the cover and the back cover have gotten a lot of good feedback, and I appreciate you you taking the time, not only for that, but also for the podcast today. This is really fun.
Absolutely. And I thank you for taking the time, because it seems like you have a pretty busy schedule here, and you're You're,
Yeah.
going back to Austria, and it's probably taking up a lot of your mental time right now because you are back in Pennsylvania now, but
Yes.
you got a lot going on. So Adam, thanks for taking the time with us.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Take care.
And thank you all for being here on PMEA's Take Note podcast presented by the Slippery Rock University Music Department. We will see you next time.